Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Faith and Forts. I am so excited to be recording a new video for this channel, and for this video or episode, however I want to categorize it, I'm going to be talking about miscarriages, and it's going to be a relatively heavy topic, but I think that it's something that I definitely want to share and talk about. It's important about my journey, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So first and foremost, the reason why I wanted to talk about this topic is because it's extremely important to me. It's something that has taken me a bit of time to really be open about what happened to me and the experiences that I went through. And I think it's important when we share what we go through, because there's always someone that might not have someone in their circle that they could rely on, or they could not have a community at that time for whatever reason. And it's really difficult to go through those experiences alone. And thanks to platforms like YouTube and different avenues that we have to connect with people, for a lot of people, this is something that they can find to help them. And I know that I was a recipient of that benefit on YouTube when I went through this. So let's get started as to my journey. So first and foremost, I got married about 5 years ago. We got married July 11th, 2020, around COVID time. And we were so excited to be married and so excited to just venture into this new season in our lives. And with all sincerity, children was not on our radar. We really wanted to be married for a while before we even considered getting pregnant. We wanted to travel, we wanted to have different experiences before we got to that point. And we did exactly that. We traveled, we went on our honeymoon, we saw various different states, then we went to Mexico, then we went to Hawaii, and then the year after that we went to New York, and then we went to Europe, and we went to all of these different places, and we really traveled and had, I would say, the time to build our marriage and get to know each other for a solid 3 years. And even though I'm going to be talking about miscarriages, I think that one of the things that's really important for me to mention about my journey is that I do not regret that. While the experiences that I went through was difficult and painful, I would not have changed the time that I took with my husband to get to know him. And I believe that because of what I went through, there was a lot of guilt later on in having that mindset. And I can say this confidently now, that I don't regret having those years where my husband and I just dedicated our time to each other, to get to know each other, to travel, to do different things that might have not been possible with children. And I also think that it's okay to say that before we get into anything else. Then year 4, we weren't planning to get pregnant right away. Something to also mention about myself is that with pregnancy, even before I got pregnant, I was terrified. I was terrified of getting pregnant, of labor, of delivery, of the process, of the unknown. I had so much anxiety of the possibility of getting pregnant, but it was something that I wanted. It's almost as, the best way I could explain it is, your dream is, I guess, to go to Disneyland, but in order to get to Disneyland, you have to drive the freeway. And let's say that you have a fear of driving on the freeway, but your dream is to get to Disneyland. The dream is not the problem, it's the process to get there that's the problem, or that's scary. That's the best way I could explain that my dream was motherhood, is motherhood, but the process to get there as far as what happens to your body, how it changes, all of the expectations that come with being pregnant, that was terrifying for me. And so my husband and I, we made some decisions in our marriage to be open to the possibility of getting pregnant. Now, internally, I was still very, like, it's okay if it doesn't happen yet because I'm still scared. Then I got pregnant, and I remember that day was filled with so much anxiety, so much anxiety. I felt guilty for being anxious. I felt guilty for feeling fear. I believe the day after I had like a panic attack, and I was just so afraid of this idea of like, I'm gonna get pregnant and I'm gonna have a baby and it's gonna come out of me, and how's that gonna happen? And there was just so much fear. And I had like a few days of that experience, and then it started to settle, and I started to kind of wrap my head around what was really gonna happen. And I got past the anxiety and the fear, and then I started to really think about, wait, I'm pregnant. I'm gonna have a baby, and I am excited about this. And while there's a lot of newness to this and it's uncertain what's gonna happen, but this is a great thing. And so it was like a roller coaster of emotions. And then came the planning, right? Came the excitement of like, how am I gonna tell my family? And there wasn't a hint of this might not work, or this might not happen for me, or I might miscarry. I mean, no one in my family, in my immediate family, had ever miscarried. No one in my husband's family had ever miscarried. And so this was just not a concept for me that I had to consider. And call that privilege, call that ignorance, whatever you want to call that. But for me, I was just like, the Lord blessed me with a pregnancy. I'm gonna have this baby. So immediately I started to think about, how am I gonna announce this? How am I gonna tell people, blah, blah. And we booked our appointments, and I remember that we went really early to the first OB appointment. At the time, things have changed now. They don't see you if you're not at least 10 to 12 weeks pregnant, at least where I'm located. But at the time, they allowed you to go and confirm the pregnancy. They'd schedule you for an ultrasound like the week after. So there wasn't this waiting period. And so I booked my first OB appointment, I booked my ultrasound, and I remember that the doctor said, you're still really early for me to be able to measure. We're not getting a heartbeat, which doesn't mean anything bad. It just means that you're probably really early. How late were you? Only about a week. So, okay, that's fine. Basically they were like, it's okay, like come back again in 2 weeks and we'll go ahead and be able to measure. So I go to the next OB appointment, and the gestational sac was able to be seen. There had been a growth since the last time, but still no heartbeat. So it was okay. It's like, again, you're super early. You're roughly 8 weeks at this point. So we're not able to completely measure. And so it's fine, but you're roughly around that time. And because of this, they weren't able to give me like a due date or anything. So I was like, that's fine, again, concept, everything is good. Nothing bad is gonna happen. I'm gonna have this baby. I'm just really early and the doctors can't detect it. Fine. My husband and I by then were already making jokes and talking about the baby and dreaming about the baby. And yes, with all honesty, at times I would feel fear, at times I would feel anxious, but I would give that to the Lord. Lord, everything's gonna be fine. Lord, everything's gonna be fine. And then we decided, let's just announce it. So I will post those reactions for the few people that we shared it with. I told my best friend, I don't have her reaction, but I told her, and she was just like, oh my goodness, like you're pregnant. And this was all around Thanksgiving time. And then, you know, we told my mom, and I told my mom, and she was just ecstatic. You know, she said, Gloria a Dios, thank you, Jesus, you know, this is gonna happen. She was so excited. I remember I was like, what do I do? What do I do? I went to Dollar Tree. I bought a little blanket and I think like a chupon or something like that. And I was like, that's how I'm gonna tell her. And so she opens the bag and she reacts, and it was such a big deal. I was so happy. And I think my sister, I didn't even like do something special. I think I just told her at work, and I'm like, I can't even wait to like tell you in a nice way. I just need you to know. And then we told my in-laws, and that was really special. We went to Olive Garden, and the reason why we chose that place was because my husband and I have like kind of a funny story with Olive Garden, which I will talk about on another video. I will talk about why Olive Garden is very special to my husband and I and our relationship. But we chose Olive Garden, and we told our in-laws that we were pregnant. My mother-in-law cried, and at the time I had been told, you know, she didn't cry for her daughters when they found out they were pregnant. So it was very special to me that my mother-in-law got very emotional. I was very emotional. And I don't want to get emotional, but I guess there's still emotions there. So we told them on a Sunday. And the following week, I went to work. It was just a regular day for me. I'll never forget. It was December 8th. And I was just going to work, and all of a sudden I went to the restroom and I noticed that I was bleeding. And it wasn't spotting. It wasn't the type of bleeding where you could brush it off and just, you know, ignore what's happening and resume to work. And I told my boss, I'm bleeding pretty excessively. I need to go. I need to go to the hospital. And I believe I hadn't told anybody at work. I hadn't told my boss. I think I told her that day or something like, or I don't know if I did not tell her. I did not tell her what was wrong. I just told her, I'm having a personal emergency. I need to leave. I drove myself to the hospital, and I showed up there, and I was alone. I called my husband. I was like, Joel, I'm heading to the hospital. I am bleeding, and, you know, I need you to, you know, get off work, and I need you to come here. It was towards the end of the day, and I arrive, I check in, I tell them what's happening. I tell them I need a pad because I am bleeding excessively, and so I can't just be sitting here bleeding. So I go to the hospital restroom. I obviously, you know, put on a pad and everything. And the whole time I'm praying and I'm begging God, please, please don't let anything happen to my baby. And all of those fears and anxiety, anxious thoughts come to flood my mind. And I feel the guilt of that fear. I feel the guilt of, Lord, please. If I had communicated fear or anxiety or even dread at some point for getting pregnant, please forgive me, but I want this baby. I want this baby. And, you know, I come back and I sit down and they take, you know, your vitals and stuff like that. And my husband at the time, once I got out, he had already arrived. And they told me, okay, we're going to take you to, you know, with the nurse, and she's going to go ahead and do a transvaginal ultrasound. So I follow her, and I know this is going to sound terrible, but she was the nurse from hell, honestly. She was a horrible woman, and, you know, she was almost like in a rush. Like, I remember I'm bleeding and I'm actually cramping, I'm in pain, and she's, you know, walking really fast, and she's like, okay, come on, we're trying to get you to your ultrasound. And I'm like, okay, you know, I believe I was wearing heels that day because of work, and so I'm trying to get there. And, you know, we get to the room where they're gonna do the ultrasound. There was another nurse or employee that was in there. She's talking to her, and she's like, oh, we're just gonna do a routine transvaginal ultrasound, you know, I need you to basically clear out, you know, blah, blah. I'm just standing there, you know, kind of seeing this interaction happen. The nurse is like, yeah, I can't wait to clock out. You know, she's making jokes with the RN. the whole time I'm thinking, I am going through this process where I am really trying to keep it together with everything that's happening, and you're over here in front of me talking about how you can't wait to clock out. And I am just kind of like in such a shock that I can't say anything. Like I'm infuriated, I'm hurt, I'm scared, but I can't speak. I can't say anything. And, you know, she gives me some instructions, you know, I need you to remove your clothes, I need you to lay here, I need you to go to the restroom, you know, try to clear out anything that you have in your system, and then come here and get ready for a transvaginal ultrasound. So I said, okay. And I'm doing all of this as kindly as possible while trying to maintain my emotions, you know, controlled. And again, you know, I come back from the restroom and I'm hearing her, you know, laughing and just, you know, again, I know that for her it was just a regular Tuesday, but for me it was a nightmare happening, and there was no compassion, there was no nothing, there was no care in that sense. So I am laying down, getting ready for this ultrasound. You know, she goes ahead and starts doing the procedure, and it was the most painful thing that I had gone through, because for anybody who knows anything about transvaginal ultrasounds, they use this tool to basically go up through you know, your vagina, and basically they're looking for your gestational sac, you know, obviously the baby, they're looking for that. I don't know, for whatever reason she wasn't able, you know, well, miscarrying, so she wasn't able to locate anything. So she started to press on my pelvis very, very hard, and she's like, I apologize, she's like, but I'm gonna have to press you because I can't find anything. And she starts pressing on my pelvis, on my like belly area with so much force. I started to cry because I was in so much pain, but I was in so many emotions. I could not speak. I could not say, lady, you're hurting me. And as I'm going through this whole process, she's like, just normal, you know, she's chewing gum. She's just, her bedside manners were terrible, but she's just like, so when are you due? Blank. I was blank. I was like, I don't know. And she's like, well, how far along are you? I was like, I think they said 8 weeks. And she's like, okay, well, when's your due date? I was like, and again, I was blank, completely blank. And I'm just trying in my head to do the math. And I was like, I think they said July. I think they said around that time. And, you know, she's over here like, how do you know? She literally told me, she's like, how do you not know the due date? And I could not communicate, lady, you're being mean. Lady, don't you understand that I'm trying to keep it together? Lady, I'm miscarrying right before your eyes, or I think I'm miscarrying. I do not know. And at some point I said July, and she's like, okay, well, if we do the math, then you would probably deliver around, you know, July 21st. And, you know, she's writing this down, and then she's like, no, I don't really want to write that down because then I would be lying on a chart, and I can't really do that. So I'm just going to put, you know, unknown as of right now. And I was like, okay. And I said, were you able to see anything? And she said, no, but I can't discuss that with you. You would have to hear that from the doctor. And I was like, okay, you know, but I mean, completely, like at that point, there was just like, it was just horrible, you know? I returned back to the emergency, you know, area. My husband is there and he's holding my hand, and I can't in that moment, you know, communicate to him. I'm in so much pain physically and emotionally, and I don't have hope right now. So we then go to another area where they do blood work, and, you know, they put us in, you know, one of those rooms where you're just waiting, and they have a curtain. And there's an RN who came to do my blood work, and it just so happens that his name was Jeremiah, which was one of the names that my husband and I were thinking for the baby. And my husband was like, that means something, babe. Like, don't lose hope. You know, we're going to be okay. What are the odds, you know, that we were thinking of Jeremiah if it was a boy? And Jeremiah, the nurse, who was the complete opposite of the other nurse. He was kind, he was attentive, he was sweet, he was respectful. He was the sweetest nurse. And he handled me with so much care that it was like complete 180 from the lady. And then Joel's like, don't worry, you know, God's gonna give us our baby. We're gonna be okay. Obviously being positive and strong. The nurse comes in, and I'm very calm at this point, and I'm praying and I'm asking God for a miracle. And then she says, we weren't able to locate any gestational sac. We've seen your records. Obviously we know that there was a gestational sac. Or I believe she said, no, they were able to locate the gestational sac, but from what it looks like, there isn't any viable, it's not going to be a viable pregnancy. There's no heartbeat, there's no life. And so essentially you are currently miscarrying. This is the beginning of the process. And obviously when you're told those news, there's nothing you could do. You're just like, okay. And you know, she gave me instructions in the coming days. You're going to notice that you're going to experience some level of contractions. You are going to essentially give labor to whatever had been developing at the time. We can give you, you know, some medications, and you know, we would recommend that you get off work for a portion of time so that you can go through this process. If you know, by a certain point you feel that you have not stopped bleeding, we know we're gonna have to check to make sure there's no infection and blah blah. And now it becomes a very medical, very, you know, rational kind of conversation. So I was just numb at that point. You know, my husband and I just looked at each other, and I remember at that point I wasn't crying. I was just numb. I was just very numb. And I remember that his best friend was there outside of the hospital. The moment I saw Alex, I just broke down. It was like the first person that we were like, you knew we were pregnant, and now we have to tell you that there's nothing there now, or it's essentially gone. And I remember, like, my husband and I, we were just broken. I came home, I called my mom, I called my mother-in-law, and it just started the process of, it didn't work. It didn't happen. And there was so much confusion in that moment, because it was like, Lord, why would you let me get pregnant if this wasn't gonna happen? Why would you let me go through this process of, if I wasn't gonna have this baby? What's, like, I don't know why I became obsessed with, what's the lesson here? What are you trying to teach me? I know that in life, because of my faith, everything is eventually for our benefit, but right now, how can you tell me that this is for my benefit? How can you tell me that this is somehow for my good? Because right now I don't have the answers as to explain why this happened. And after that, so began the process of grieving. You know, obviously our family and close friends that knew that we were pregnant were broken with us, had to figure out how to say the right thing. And it's such a hard thing to do when you know somebody has miscarried. You feel like, what do I say? What do you say to that person? You know, oh, they're in a better place now. You know, like, what do you say? And I know our family struggled with that, especially because it was the first time something like this had happened. I felt so alone. I felt like I couldn't reach out to my sisters. I felt like I couldn't reach out to my sister-in-laws. And by the grace of God, it just so happened we were attending a life group where there were two wonderful women who at that time had shared with me their experiences with miscarriages. And I was able to cling to them. I mean, they told me, this is what you need to do. This is what's going to happen to your body. This is what you're going to go through. You need to make sure that your system is completely flushing out everything that is there. And it's going to feel difficult. It's going to be an emotional experience. And it was. It was difficult for me to like not be emotional, or move on when my body was still having effects. I was still bleeding. I was still, you know, again, don't mean to be graphic, but flushing out remnants of the baby that was developing. And how do you tell your brain, I need you to move on? I need you to think on something positive when your body isn't allowing you to move on? And I know my husband, he took the role of, we need to be strong, we need to move forward, God's gonna give us more children, you know, that role. But for me, it's like, you don't understand. I can't stop grieving because my body is going through this process. And we even went through, you know, that period of like, did you not care about this pregnancy? You know, you're taking this in a very different way. I'm very emotional. For him, it was like, just because you don't see me crying the way you're crying doesn't mean that this isn't painful for me, but I need to be strong for you, because two people broken isn't going to make the matters better. And so while we're going through all of this, you know, obviously there are, you know, comments that I hear from individuals, you know, that are trying to figure out the best way to help a couple that is going through this. And I'm thankful that there wasn't a large amount of comments that were insensitive or anything like that, but they were there, and it's hard. It's really hard. I would say the most irritating ones were, you know, the Lord is going to give you more children. Don't worry, you know, they say that after a miscarriage, your next pregnancy is for sure going to be solid. Those comments that might sound hopeful and positive really sound at times like, it's okay. Don't worry and don't grieve over what's happening right now, because things are going to get better in the future. You cannot tell a grieving woman that is going through this experience with her body, and that while, yes, there might have been fears and there might have been reservations about the future, was enamoring herself with what was happening in her body. I was talking to the baby. I was praying for the baby. I was dreaming about the baby. I was already thinking about my baby shower, and I was only roughly 8 to 9 weeks pregnant. And this isn't something that I want to necessarily ignore or forget. And while I don't know if this baby was a boy or a girl, I loved that baby. I wanted that baby. We wanted that baby. And then that process of grieving with my faith, all that I did, I remember after that day, that same day, I cried, and I told my mom, I told my mother-in-law what had happened. They cried with me. They broke with me. I remember sitting on my bed, and I lifted my hands and I told the Lord, you're still good. I don't understand this, but you're still good. I know that. I have an awareness of that regardless of what happens in my life, I know that you're good. And I know that it's so easy to praise God and give glory and go to church and worship and say He's good when everything in your life is aligning and working out. But when bad things happen, when tragedies happen, when unanswered questions arise, it's difficult to say, you are good. But that day, I said it and I meant it, and I told Him, I am angry, I am confused, I am broken, but somehow, some way in my soul, I know you are good. And all that I'm asking is that you help me. And through that process, my husband and I obviously grieved together and clung to, you know, these friends that had appeared at just the right time through our life group. And we sought out, you know, counsel with them and prayer with them. And I'm so thankful to Erica and Melissa, who are dear friends of mine, who carried me through that process of just everything that I went through. And in that whole journey, it made me a little tougher in the sense that I said, Lord, the next time that I get pregnant, I know that I want this baby. Forgive me, for having fear and having anxiety. But the next time it happens, Lord, I'm going to be ready for it. And there was so much guilt on my end. I felt like, what did I do wrong? Was there something? And that was another thing that I heard, that those were the insensitive comments that I heard. Well, you should have tried right away. When you got married, you should have tried right away to at least see if you could have kids, because a lot of women, they get on birth control and then they try to have kids once they get off and they find out they can't have kids because they were on birth control. I had been on birth control, and there was a guilt. Now, like everything after that through the grieving process had guilt attached to it. This guilt that it was something that I did, something that maybe I didn't eat the right foods. Maybe I didn't sleep the right way. Lord knows I slept on my belly those last few weeks. And so maybe that had something to do with it. And maybe it was because I was on birth control and I still had hormones that were affecting my body. And so therefore it wasn't viable. Or maybe the egg quality wasn't right. And there was a lot of me guilt. There hardly was a lot of like, well, it could have also been the sperm quality as well or something like that. No, I put so much pressure on myself to really be like, you know what? No, like this is me. This is my fault. And eventually, I got through it, and I even had to tell my husband, I need you to tell me that this wasn't my fault. And he was like, I need you to tell me that this wasn't my fault. We both had to come to terms of, we don't understand why this happened. All that we can do is pick up the pieces of, our brokenness and bring that to God and have Him be in control of our healing, and trust that somehow He knows better. That somehow this experience is going to be for our benefit. We might never have the answer. We might never even see at the end of the road how this was for our benefit. But right now, all we can do is move forward. And I went through that experience in December. And I had heard, from my OB after this whole experience, she told me, start trying right away. Start trying right away, because oftentimes what happens is that when you have a miscarriage, that doesn't work out, but the next one has a really high chance of, essentially, working out. So I talked to my husband, and while we were still grieving and while we were still going through this whole process, we were like, let's just keep going. Let's just keep trying to see, if we're gonna get pregnant. And I prayed so much, and I even told the Lord, the next time I get pregnant, I know that it's gonna work. Because for me, it was like, Lord, you're not gonna let me go through this experience again. And I almost felt like, you know what? I passed the test. I went through this process. I didn't deny you, Lord. I might have experienced some anger. I might have experienced some depression. I might have experienced some confusion, Lord, but I never denied you. I never walked away from you. So therefore, I must have passed this test. I must have reacted to this the right way. So therefore, this isn't gonna happen again. The next time I get pregnant, it's gonna be successful. And I kept asking the Lord, do not let me get pregnant unless it's gonna be successful. So I had so much faith. I get pregnant again. And it had been some time since I had miscarried. Well, actually, I hadn't been that much time. I found out I was pregnant around March. And I was like, Lord, this is perfect timing. I'm still going through my grieving process, but it's gonna happen for me. And now that I know that I'm pregnant, I know that it's happened. My response, I wasn't anxious, I wasn't afraid, I was solid. I almost had forced myself to have the right reaction because I was like, I know this is gonna happen. And this time around, we didn't say anything. We chose not to say anything because then there was that fear. And there was that fear of, my husband more than me was like, I don't want us to go through that process again. It was very difficult for us to have to share with our family and then to have to say, oh, by the way, never mind. And it was also difficult for them to say the right things, and we had all of those experiences. And so let's just keep this to ourselves. Let's not share this news to the world. We'll share it until the 12-week mark, because that's what society tells you that you have to do, that you never know what's going to happen, so don't share until you hit the 12-week mark. And so that's what we were going to do. We're gonna do that. I still told my mom, I still told my sister, because I just couldn't hold it. And obviously they were happy. They were like, this is gonna happen, this is great, everything's gonna be fine. I didn't even reach my OB appointment before I started bleeding again. And same experience. It wasn't like spotting, it was like a full-blown, very heavy period. And this time, the emotional toll that it took was much heavier than it was on the first one. Because while I was further along on the first pregnancy, for this one, there was so much hope and there was so much faith and so much prayer that had gone into this pregnancy that it was unfathomable for me that it wasn't going to work. So I would say that experience was a much deeper gut punch to my faith, because it was like, whoa, wait a second. But I reacted the right way. I overcame, in my opinion, my emotions and my grieving, and I'm still going to church, I'm still praying, I'm still doing X, Y, and Z thing. Lord, why did this happen again? I believed, I prayed that it wouldn't happen. I don't understand. So there was a much more heavier feeling this time around. We had to then tell people why I didn't want to go out, why I didn't want to attend certain family functions, because at this point I would say I went into a relative mini depression, because I was just confused. I was feeling lost. And at that point, my husband had to share with his family, oh, by the way, Kez was pregnant again and she miscarried again. And I need you guys to understand why we can't attend certain things and why, this is happening. And I felt like at this point now, the worries and the fears were, is there something wrong with me? Is there something wrong with my health? Is there something wrong with my womb, with my uterus, with my reproductive health? Is there something that I'm not doing properly? All of these fears and worries came to the surface, because now it's like, okay, it wasn't just one. And then even I remember after the first miscarriage, after I started to feel a little bit better, I started to say, wait, the statistics show that, 1 in every 4 pregnancies is a miscarriage. And many women go through this. And then it started to pop out, oh, miscarriages are very common. But then the second one, it was like, wait a second, this isn't normal. This isn't something that makes sense. And now I have this worry. Now my husband has this worry. Is there something wrong with me? And in California, at least, I don't know about other states, you have to have 3 miscarriages consecutively for you to be able to do testing regarding fertility. So I wasn't even able to have a finalization on my health as to, is there something wrong at the time, because you're technically not within the window of risk. And I went through that whole process again, the comments, the maybe, it just wasn't time or what have you. And again, the Lord knows all things. And again, you agree with that. And as a Christian who's putting her faith in the Lord, that makes sense. But at the same time, when you're going through that pain of like, Lord, why are you allowing this? It's really hard to receive that in that moment. And from that point on, I went through a period of, I'm not going to try. I'm not going to try to get pregnant right now. I think I need to really just focus on my mental health. I need to focus on losing weight. I need to focus on eating better. I need to focus on exercising. And I decided to start putting my focus and energy on all of that. And I kind of put babies out of my mind. I put those experiences out of my mind as much as I could, and it would seep through. I mean, anytime I would see a pregnancy announcement on Instagram, it was so hard. I mean, there was a period in our church where, I mean, it was like spring season, pregnancy, this person's pregnant, that person's pregnant, that person's pregnant. And I remember that I went through so much envy, and I felt angry. And why them and not me? What do they have that I don't have? Are they kinder? Are they more generous? Are they more spiritual? Are they more something that I don't have? Why did I have to lose? And these women are getting pregnant without a hint of fear, without a hint of anxiety, and they're just planning, and they're just posting, and they're just sharing this good news. But I'm over here trying to make sense as to why I'm not in that position. And having that silent rage when you're on a Sunday service and having to smile to someone of like, I am so happy for you. I'm so happy for you that you're pregnant. And then you have individuals that say, yeah, but it's this or it's that, or it's been horrible, or the pregnancy is this, or don't have kids, and they don't even know what you've gone through, but they're like, don't have kids, honestly. And you're like, do you have any idea how much I wish I was in your shoes? Do you have any idea how ridiculously ungrateful you sound, that you are literally communicating, don't have kids, it's really hard, they're a lot, they're a handful, they're this, they're that. And you're just like, this, Lord, is the person that you chose to bless for the third time? This is the person that's getting pregnant again? And having to go through all of those experiences in retrospect, definitely, I would say, molded me to be a better person. I had to learn that one is not blessed because they're good or because they are better than other people. The Lord blesses on who he deems worthy. The Bible says that the sun shines on the good and the wicked alike. It doesn't matter who you are. There are people who will experience good things, and in my perspective, I might think they're undeserving of that, but no, that attitude in my heart is something that needs to be dealt with. And God took me through a process of understanding, hey, I need you to humble yourself. I need you to understand that if you have received anything from my hand that has seemed like a blessing to you, it is something that I can give and take away at any time. But also, it is not given to you because you are smarter or better or whatever more than other people. It was given to you because of my goodness. My goodness gave you your home. My goodness gave you your job. My goodness gave you the things that you have. So if you're going to give glory, you don't give glory to yourself, you give glory to the Lord. And in the same way, while you're going through this difficulty, if I gave you a child, it is not because you are a better woman, prepared and equipped to be a mother than this person. It is because I chose to bless you. It is because I chose to open that door for you. And that lesson was extremely hard for me to get to, but I got there. And I reached a point where I was able to see a pregnancy announcement, and I didn't have to delete Instagram and or silent notifications, or stop following, you know, certain stories, or mute certain stories, because I just couldn't take it at that time. I got to a point where I was like, you know what, I'm genuinely happy for this person. I'm genuinely, whether they're complaining through the process or not, Lord, you chose to bless them. And I know, and then that's when the hope started coming back. And I know that in your timing, it will happen for me. It will happen for me. And my husband and I took a while to get to the point where we are today. And I spent all of 2024 working out and trying to lose weight. I lost 20 pounds. That's right. I lost 20 pounds. And I did 3 races in 1 year. I did a 5K in February. I did a 10K in June. And then I did a half marathon in December. And that year, 2024, was my year of just really healing and trying to see my capability. And I remember when I did my 5K, I had never ran more than a mile. 5K was, again, unfathomable for me. And when I crossed the finish line, I remember that 5K, nobody knew, but the 5K was dedicated to basically my loss. It was dedicated to my first miscarriage. Then in June, I did a 10K, and that medal was dedicated to the baby that I had lost in April. And in December, when I did my half marathon, that was a dedication of everything that I had gone through. It was a dedication of my own strength, of my own capability, of where God got me through. And never in my mind would I have imagined that I would have ran 13 miles. I didn't run it in 2 hours. I ran it in 4 miles, and I was one of the last people there, but I finished it. I ran 13 miles, 13.1 miles through my, hometown. And that medal, I remember as I was getting ready to cross the finish line for the half marathon, I put on my 5K medal. I brought it with me, and I put on my 10K medal, and I crossed the finish line, because in my heart, nobody knew that crossing that finish line meant this didn't kill me. The pain and the loss and the grief and the hurt that I went through this year, it didn't kill me. It didn't kill my faith. It didn't kill my marriage. It didn't kill my sanity or my mental health and my emotional health. It got me to finish this line. It got me to finish this race. And in life, sometimes you are running, sometimes you are walking, sometimes you are crawling, but all you need to do is move forward. And in December, we started trying for a baby. We started trying again, putting our faith in the Lord. I started being so vocal to a lot of people about what I had gone through. I opened up to our prayer group at church, and I told them about my experiences, and they knew full well the pain that I had gone through. I was open about, I haven't gotten pregnant yet, I haven't gotten pregnant yet, but pray for me, sisters. I'm going through it. I'm dealing with the waiting season. And my husband and I tried for 7 months with no success of pregnancy. I was lighter in the sense that I weighed less. I was at my peak of health. I was eating better. I was on prenatals. I was on vitamins. I was doing everything, right? And every month, no pregnancy. No. And it wasn't until June of this year, 2025, that I decided to start thanking the Lord instead of asking for a baby. Because up until that point, I had just been asking, Lord, bless me. Lord, this is my deepest desire. This is my hope. This is something that I am asking of you. And similarly, Lord, help me to trust that if I were to get pregnant again, whatever you decide, help me to trust. And I was praying and praying. I remember talking to my prayer leader, And I started telling her, you know, it hasn't happened yet. And I've been feeling that restlessness, that frustration of like, when is it going to happen? And she said, you need to stop asking God for the miracle or the promise to be fulfilled. You need to start thanking him for it. I thank you for my baby. I thank you that you know, this baby is going to grow healthy and strong, that this baby is going to have the Spirit of the Lord. I thank you, Lord, that I'm going to have a healthy pregnancy. I thank you, Lord, that I'm going to have a healthy delivery. And you need to believe in faith. You need to declare it in the name of Jesus. And I started doing that. I started declaring, and I started every day. I would hold my belly, and even though I was like, there's nothing there, Lord, but I thank you for my baby. I thank you that he or she is growing, you know, at some point, you know, strong. I thank you for a healthy pregnancy. I thank you for a healthy delivery. Lord, you are good, and I believe that your timing is perfect, but I thank you for my baby. I thanked the Lord for 3 weeks. And on June 19th, I was off. My job gave it to us off. And I had been late. And I thought to myself, this is so weird. I didn't even, you know, prop up a camera like I had done in previous months. And I was disappointed every time it was negative. I even sat on the toilet and I'm like, I'm just going to look at it. If it's, you know, positive or not, I know it's going to be negative. I'm sitting there and I see that it is 2 lines. I was in shock, complete shock. I was like, there's no way. There's no way. There is no way. I had become so used to seeing a negative pregnancy test that my brain was like, no. And one of the things that I remember praying as well was, Lord, the day that you allow me to get pregnant, let there be an unspeakable joy in my heart. I don't want anxiety. I don't want fear. Let me experience joy. And I remember that I took another test, and I remember that there was the clear blue where it officially tells you pregnant or not pregnant, and it said pregnant. And I could not believe it. And another video I will be showing all of the reactions from our family, but I could not believe what had happened. I was like, Lord, I started praying. I started thanking the Lord. Thank you, Jesus, for my baby. It is here. It is happening. This is from you, Lord. And I know I'm going to experience fears. I know I'm going to experience worries, because there's going to be that enemy that's going to try to attack and steal away my joy. It's not going to happen. You're going to have another miscarriage. You're going to go through this. You're going to go no, Lord, I rebuke that in the name of Jesus. And I thank you because you've blessed me. And I thank you because the waiting season is over. And that's when, you know, the announcement started happening. And so now, recording this video, I am pregnant, and I am so excited for what the Lord is going to do. And even though I went through those experiences, and if I'm completely honest, has it crossed my mind, what if it doesn't happen, or what if this, or what if that? Of course it does. I'm human. But there's much more faith, and there's much more clinging to God's goodness and God's faithfulness. But there's also a peace in my heart that knows that the Lord has carried me through very difficult seasons. And I know how to worship the Lord when things are going good, but I also know how to worship the Lord when things are not. And that is something that I know, that no matter what happens, my faith is going to be intact, because I have not allowed my circumstances to dictate the way that I serve my God. And I can cling to his promises, and I can cling to his word, and I believe in faith that this baby is going to grow and grow perfectly fine and be full term, and you guys are going to meet him. But I also believe that no matter what, when it comes to our faith, we have to learn to detach ourselves from our circumstances and learn to trust God, not just when things are going good. And again, this is my experience. This is my conclusion. This is my resolve. But I understand that not everybody gets to that point of faith and that point of trust in the Lord. When we go through difficulties, people's times of grief is much longer. For a lot of people, the time period of questioning and confusing, or the confusion, is longer. And I praise God, at least in my situation, that I was able to move forward. I went through the process, I went through the emotions, I went through the roller coaster, but I am where I'm at today, where my faith is intact because of His grace and His glory. And I am trusting in Him. I am holding on to His hand for this whole pregnancy, and knowing that whatever happens, He is going to birth out of me a new person. Today, I have a lot more compassion. I'm a lot more sensitive about what I say. I'm careful about complaining. I've had a relatively rough pregnancy as far as nausea and vomiting and fatigue, but I'm careful about how I say things. I'm careful about what I say things to married women that don't have kids yet. I'm compassionate when I hear about someone who I hear they've miscarried. There is an awareness, a protectiveness. There is a special prayer that I have for these women and these men that go through this process. There is a better kindness that I have reached because I can learn to be happy for someone even if I might not be in that season. And so I can't necessarily say, oh, thanks to the miscarriage, or I'm glad that it happened. No, not necessarily. That's going to be what comes out of my mouth. But what I am saying is that when you go through the fire, you are refined. And however we choose to look at life's difficulties, we can look at it with this bitterness and this unfairness and why did this happen, and let that consume us. Or we can choose to allow these life experiences to mold us and refine us, and allow God to make us the people that we are today. And unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, difficulty always causes a level of awareness and consideration and compassion. When you've gone through something, you understand people, you have better care for people when you go through that. And so to finish off this video and this testimony almost of what I went through with miscarriages, I just want to say, if you are listening to this video and you have suffered a miscarriage, you are not alone. There's no perfect way to grieve. There's no perfect way to how you should handle all of these things. But what I will say, at least in my experience, surround yourself with as many people as you possibly can. Obviously the right people, obviously people who are going to be sensitive to you and are going to be kind to you, but communicate, speak it. One of the biggest things that I did was I was vocal, not just with the people around me, but with my God. I'm angry. I'm confused. I feel lost. I feel broken. I was vocal about everything. I needed to get it out, because when we bottle things up and when we don't communicate, that tends to rot from the inside. And then what's birthed is bitterness. It's this resentment towards life, towards God, even towards our spouses. There can be a resentment of like, you're not in the same pain that I'm in. And we invalidate their experience just because they're male and their body might not have gone through the same experience. We can turn to be just as nasty because we're in so much pain. And so if you're going through that, I would suggest find yourself a community. Comment on this episode if you're looking for a community. I'd love to talk to you. But more than anything, if you are a believer or if you're not, God is right there to carry you through this process. And God might be the last person that you might want to talk to, because you might be thinking, God allowed for this to happen. Unfortunately, in this world, things happen, negative things happen, but God is an ever-present promise that He will carry us through it, that He will be there through all of our difficulties, regardless if we have people in our life or not. He is there. And if you've not experienced this and you were just curious about miscarriages or how to approach women and men who go through this experience, what I would say is be careful. be careful about what you say. I'm not saying don't post your pregnancy post or don't feel happy for your experiences. That's not what I'm saying, but be careful when you approach a couple that is married or together and they haven't had kids yet, and you're quick to say, why don't you have kids yet? Why haven't you had kids? What are you guys doing? What are you waiting? We don't know the situation. Or instead of saying, oh, you know what, you should try right away because you never know if you're going to have kids, maybe don't say anything. And if you have children, maybe don't complain about being a parent, and be a little bit more mindful about the kind of parent that you're being. And if that's what the Lord allowed you to have and you wanted to have kids, maybe have and build a little bit of gratefulness as to the season that you're in, because there are so many women that wish they could be in your shoes, but for whatever reason they can't. And you have these blessings that a lot of the times are taken for granted. And so that's what I would say to those that are listening. Thank you so much for watching. I apologize if the video was super long, but I really wanted to share for the first time my experience with miscarriages and where I'm at today, and to share, the good news of me in the season that I am in. And thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Bye. Alexa, where's the scripture in the Bible where it says, you knit me in my mother's womb?